tons and tons of questions about my widow's peak. I didn't realize so many of you out there were kind of fighting with your widow's peak when it comes to wearing wigs. So we're going to talk about today what a widow's peak is, how many people in the world have widow's peaks, and how to deal with them while wearing wigs. A large percentage of the population actually have widow's peaks, more than you may think. And it is completely genetic, so there is really nothing you can do to control having a widow's peak or not. A widow's peak is a patch of hair that comes down out of the regular hairline in a V-shaped pattern. It's usually very pronounced there. Instead of having a straight across hairline, there's actually a V there of hair. So obviously I have a very pronounced widow's peak there. Some of the most beautiful people in the world have widow's peaks though. Think back to Marilyn Monroe. All of the photos that she ever did kind of sport that widow's peak. It was very obvious that she was a very beautiful woman. More recently, let's say somebody around my age would be like Brooke Shields. Brooke Shields has a beautiful widow's peak. And then somebody younger would be like Kourtney Kardashian. The Kardashians have all that hair, and she also has a very beautiful widow's peak. And maybe you didn't even realize how much of a widow's peak you had until you went to wear wigs. And maybe there was a lace front, and what is that little patch of hair doing there, and how can I get rid of it, or how can I work with it? When I first started to wear wigs, I was really bewildered by this little widow's peak of hair here. So I went through a lot of different things. When I first started to wear wigs, I just wanted it gone. Initially, I shaved it. So I shaved it up to where the normal hairline is. And that really wasn't a fantastic solution because guess what? Just like a man's beard, by 5 o'clock it started to peek through again and you could see it. So unless I shaved it every day, it really wasn't a nice permanent solution. And it kind of made me look a little odd when I didn't have a wig on. So I didn't look at that as being a really good solution. You could color it, and for the longest time, even though I wore wigs, I continued to bleach my hair. I bleached my hair so that the widow's peak wouldn't be quite as obvious. But again, within a week's time, you're starting to see some regrowth there, and you're back to square one, and you can't continue to bleach and color your hair all the time. So I finally learned a couple of strategies that really helped. Not only did it help, but it actually made the wigs look a little more natural under the lace front. And it just looked like a little natural root kind of peeking through, and who doesn't have that these days? Everybody seems to color their hair and have roots coming through, and that widow's peak just gave me a really nice natural touch to the wig. So I learned to love this widow's peak very quickly, and now it's just second nature. And I think that people will still assume that I don't really like my widow's peak, but I actually love it. I think it gives a really nice touch to the wigs. So here's how I learned to love my widow's peak. The biggest breakthrough I had was learning how to part my biological hair underneath my wig in a way that would help my wig look more natural, especially with a lace front. So think about how you part your hair. I typically part my hair on the left-hand side, just left of center, and that really works well with a lot of the wigs because the factory parts are usually on the left. So I'm gonna let the widow's peak actually be my guide when it comes to parting my wigs. So I'm parting a little bit on the left-hand side. So you can see that very pronounced V-shaped pattern of hair here, and that's gonna be where my part starts. It's gonna start right along that edge and then follow all the way back through the wig. So here is the first example that I'm going to show you, just so you know what that I'm putting on here. It's the Belle Tress Cold Brew Chic hand tied in the color Bombshell Blonde. It features a lace front and a single monofilament top, and then a completely hand tied base. So it's a very realistic looking wig. But let's take a look at how I work with that widow's peak underneath the lace features. So when I apply the wig, I generally bring it up just to the edge, the tip of that widow's peak, and I know that it's in place correctly. Now this has kind of been trained. I've worn it a couple times, and that's how I part it. I start right here, and then I start to divide the hair as if this was the beginning of the part, and that runs all the way back. So what that does is it gives it a nice natural parting space look by using that widow's peak as a guide. So you can see it looks completely natural, and it just looks like a part of my style. Looks like a little bit of root is coming through. If you wanted to part your hair on the right-hand side and you're working with the widow's peak, same thing. So just start your part, use that widow's peak. It's a little hard to do here in the camera, but you understand the concept is use that widow's peak as your guide to start that part. And you're just working it at this point. You're just working that widow's peak to your greatest advantage on your wig styles that have lace fronts. So what about a wig style that is just a traditional standard cap that doesn't have any lace features? Your widow's peak can play a big role in the natural look of such cap features. So here I have my Noriko Dolce and Mochaccino R. I'm going to go ahead and put it on and show you. Alright, so on a style like this, you can always move down the edge of the cap below the widow's peak and completely cover it up, and it's not a problem. But if you want to add a little bit of extra realistic touch to your wigs, you can use that widow's peak to your advantage. Now my widow's peak is more or less the same color as the rooting on this Mochaccino R color. So I'm just going to move the wig back just a little bit, and then I am going to pull out the hair on that widow's peak. Pull it out and blend it back into the style. That's a way to show off your widow's peak and make a standard cap look more natural. So occasionally I run into a situation where the cap is designed in such a way that my widow's peak is kind of jutting out there, and it just doesn't look natural at all. Even if I try to part it, there might be a seam between the lace front and the monofilament top that kind of gets in the way and breaks up the appearance of that widow's peak and makes it look a little strange. And I have a solution for that too. It does involve a little makeup. So here I have my TAZSWIGCLOSET mid-length wave cut in the color 2417. Now this is a hand-tied cap, but to me it seems a little discombobulated, like little pieces and parts all put together here. But you'll notice a very shallow lace front, and then a large strip of polyurethane between the lace front and the monofilament top. That creates a stark line that's visible from the outside of the style. Can you see that line there? When there's a stark line between the lace front and the monofilament top, the widow's peak seems to just stop right there. And to me, that doesn't look probably the most natural. Then I will resort to covering it up, and my method of choice on that is just using a little bit of eyeshadow. So I am going to apply a very pale eyeshadow color. Either a flesh tone or maybe a yellow-based eyeshadow powder. So what I want to do is dip my brush in and gather some powder, but I'm going to apply it in two places. I'm going to apply it directly to the widow's peak before I apply the wig, and then after I apply the wig. And I'm going to apply that directly to the widow's peak as much as I need there. Then I'm going to apply the style. So now that I have applied the wig, you can already tell just by applying the very light color directly to the hair of the widow's peak. I'm going to finish it off by going over the top as well. So let's identify the widow's peak there. Very difficult in front of a camera, no mirrors, so I think you get the idea, but just go in and kind of blend it in. And that widow's peak just seems to have disappeared underneath the eyeshadow. Now this is a technique that you can use that is not permanent, that will last you the entire day or for however long that you wear the wig that day. You may have to repeat this each time you wear it, but at least you don't have to use goopy colors or makeup foundation and things like that kind of gets in the lace front. It simply just shakes right out. I hope you enjoyed today's segment. We'll see you next time on Taz's Wig Closet at Wig Studio One.